Hello everyone, welcome the Star Beats fan, and I've been around and moved a bit. It's been about a year, but it doesn't seem that long. It seems like 2 years. I see. I can't keep track of years anymore. They go by so quickly. For years, no one knew about Fred Aistare's secret last dance. When the 80-year-old Hollywood legend showed up on the set of a cheap sci-fi show in 1979, no one expected to see the king of dance. The studio hid the footage because they were embarrassed by how old and weak he looked, but now it's been leaked online and fans can't believe their eyes. His last steps weren't on a golden stage, and the sad reason he did them will break your heart. Frederick Astaire was born in Omaha, Nebraska, on May 10, 1899. His father, Friedrich Emanuel Astaire, was from Linz in Upper Austria and worked at the Storz Brewing Company. His mother, Johanna Gass, was born in the U.S. but had German roots from East Prussia. Their last name was originally Austerlitz, but they changed it to Ara to avoid confusion with the Battle of Austerlitz in the Napoleonic Wars. Fred's older sister Adele was 3 years older and had a natural talent for singing and dancing. Their mother saw something special in her and decided both children should have a future in entertainment. Fred didn't care much for dancing at first, but as he watched Adele practice he started copying her steps. Before long he was just as good as she was. Their mother realized he had talent too, so she made a bold decision. In 1905, when Fred was 6, the family moved to New York City so the children could train professionally. They had no connections, little money, and no guarantees. Their father lost his job soon after the move, which made things even harder. Despite this, Fred and Adele enrolled at the Alvin Master School of the Theater and Academy of Cultural Arts, where they learned dance, acting, and music. Fred also picked up instruments like the piano, accordion, and clarinet, skills that would later make him a more versatile performer. That same year, the siblings debuted in a small theater in Keyport, New Jersey. Their act was called Juvenile Artists, presenting an electric musical toe dancing novelty. Fred wore a top hat and tails for one part of the show and a lobster costume for another. It was a strange mix, but people liked it. Soon, they were on the vaudeville circuit and performing in the Midwest, the West, and the South. Their mix of comedy and dance helped them stand out, but there were problems. During her teenage years, Adele got taller than Fred, which made their performances look funny. Tough rules against child labor made it even harder to stay out of trouble. The family took a 2-year break from show business. When they came back, they were better than ever. They had learned new dance styles, such as tap and ballroom, with the famous teacher Aurelio Coya. Adele's natural charm still won over people, but Fred's technical skill got better over time. His moves became smooth, sharp, and perfectly timed, and he started to stand out in a way that not even Adele could, even though they were both getting better. It was hard for them to get ahead in show business because they were young and hadn't done much before. Their father had a hard time finding work after Nebraska's breweries were shut down because of prohibition, which put even more pressure on them to do well. But they didn't give up. They kept working on their routines, making their footwork and performances more precise. By 1911, they were performing regularly again, getting attention and winning over audiences across the country. Fred and Adele Astaire's first show on Broadway was an over-the-top patriotic revue put on during World War I. It was their big break, and people quickly fell in love with them. Laughter and flawless dance moves. Adele's lively stage presence went well with Fred's choreography. Their big break came in 1924 with Lady Be Good, a musical with songs by George and Ira Gershwin. This show was a turning point in musical theater. It introduced a jazz-influenced style that felt new and sophisticated. The Gershwin brothers' music. By this point, they were one of the most exciting sibling acts on Broadway, thanks to Fred's sharp footwork and Adele's contagious energy. Critics praised their grace and fun. Few dancers could pull off a performance that mixed elegance and light-hearted humor like they did. Adele was naturally funny and often stole the show, but Fred's careful choreography made their routine stand out. He knew how to show off Adele's strengths while showcasing his own technical skills. Brilliant. One of their most popular routines was called the runaround. They would link arms as if riding bicycles and run in circles around the stage before vanishing into the wings. It was playful and effortless and audiences loved it. Their chemistry was undeniable. Critics often called them the most graceful and charming young dancers in the world of musical comedy. Their success wasn't limited to Broadway. In 1927 they took their talents to L with Funny Face, another collaboration with George and Ira Gershwin. The show was a sensation in the West End and Fred's tap dancing skills were at their peak by 1930. Writer Robert Benchley called him the greatest tap dancer in the world. In 1931 they starred in The Bandwagon, another hit that proved their appeal stretched beyond the United States. Their performances won over both the LG goers and members of high society. Even British royalty was drawn to their charm. But after 27 years of dancing together everything changed. In 1932 Adele retired from performing to marry Lord Charles Cavendish, the son of the Duke of Devonshire. It was the end of an era. Fred, who had spent nearly his whole life dancing beside his sister, now had to step into the spotlight alone. At first the adjustment wasn't easy, but it opened new doors for him. That same year, his first big solo hit was Gay Divorce, which introduced a romantic dance style that would later define his Hollywood career. It was also during this time that he worked with Cole Porter on Night and Day, which would become one of his most famous performances. Fred Astaire came to Hollywood in 1933 ready to show himself, but his first screen test at RKO Pictures didn't go well. He got the harsh feedback: can't sing, can't act, slightly balding, can dance a little. That review could have ended his career before it even began, but Astaire kept it going. David Osnick, the producer who signed him, wasn't completely sold either. In a memo, he wrote that Astaire had big ears and a bad chin line, but he did admit that there was something about him that made him appealing, even on this terrible test. That appeal would soon make him one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. In the same year, RKO loaned him to MGM for the movie Dancing Lady, where he danced with Joan Crawford. It wasn't a big part, but it got him noticed. When he went back to RKO, he was cast in Flying Down to Rio, but he wasn't the lead, he had fifth billing. But when he stepped on the screen, everything changed. Critics said he was distinctly likable, and audiences loved him as a dancer. That movie also introduced something else, his partnership with Ginger Rogers. They weren't the main draw of Flying Down to Rio, but their dance together stole the show. Their karaoke performance, in which they danced with their foreheads touching, became an instant hit. At first, Astaire wasn't interested in working with Ginger Rogers again. He had spent years dancing on stage with his sister Adele and wanted to go it alone. He even wrote to his agent and said, "I will not have it. I did not go into, but audiences wanted more, and the company pushed for it." From 1933 to 1939. The movies could have teamed her with anyone else. Astaire and Rogers were in 9 movies together, one of which was The Gay Divorce. 1934-1935's Top Hat and 1930's Success, Swing Time, their routines felt like magic because they got along so well. Katharine Hearn once said it best: he gives her class, and she gives him sex appeal. Not only were their movies popular, but 6 of their 9 RKO musicals were among the studio's highest-grossing movies at the time. But their impact went beyond ticket sales. Astaire and choreographer Hermes Pan changed the way dance was used in movies. It wasn't just about showing off your footwork, every step, movement, and routine had a story behind it. 2 of their most famous movies are in 1935 and 1936, Top Hat and Swing Time showed off everything that made them great. In Top Hat, Rogers played an American dancer named Jerry Travers who falls in love with Dale Tremont, played by Travers. Irving Berlin's famous songs, such as Cheek to Cheek, Top Hat, White Tie and Tails, and Tails, were used in the movie. In one of the most famous scenes, a man used his cane like a gun to imitate shooting down a chorus line. Even he found it hard, and it took several takes to get it right, even though he usually liked long shots with no breaks. The movie did really well. It was the second highest-grossing movie of 1935 and was later recognized by the Library of Congress as culturally significant. Next came Swing Time, which many critics think was their best movie together. It had unforgettable songs like Pick Yourself Up and Never Going to Dance. That last routine was one of the hardest ones they ever filmed. It took 40 takes to get it just right. The emotion and hard work that went into every move made it one of the most memorable dance sequences in history. Astaire was a perfectionist. He didn't just perform, he oversaw everything. He choreographed, helped write music, and made sure the camera angles caught every step just right. Unlike modern musicals, which rely on quick cuts, he thought dance should be filmed in full-body shots with as few edits as possible. Even his tap sounds had to be perfect. After 1935's Roberta, he started re-recording all of his taps in post-production, which no one else in Hollywood was doing at the time. His rehearsals were just as intense. He started getting ready months in advance and had to practice from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. Ginger Rogers once joked that her feet were sore from practicing in high heels all the time after his legendary run with Ginger Rogers. Fred Astaire kept dancing and found new partners who could dance the way he did. In 1942's You Were Never Lovelier, he worked with Rita Hayworth in a movie that had all the charm of a classic Hollywood romance. Hayworth played an American dancer who is mistaken for a secret admirer of Maria Acuna, played by Astaire. But what really made the movie special was the way they got along. Astaire often called Hayworth his favorite dance partner, praising her natural grace and ability to match his footwork. It wasn't always glamorous to work on the movie. They trained in a room above a funeral home and had to stop whenever a procession went by. It was an odd place for two of Hollywood's most beautiful dancers to be, but when the cameras were rolling, they made it look easy. He also worked with Judy Garland in the 1948 movie Easter Parade. This movie almost didn't happen for him. It was supposed to be Gene Kelly who played the lead role, but he hurt himself before filming started. Kelly had briefly retired in 1946, but he came back for this project and it was a huge success. It was the highest-grossing musical of 1948 and had unforgettable songs like Stepping Out with My Baby. Garland and Astaire were a perfect match. She had a warm personality, liveliness that complemented his quiet style. Behind the scenes, things were more complex. Even though Garland had personal problems and the movie went through changes in leadership, the end result was one of MGM's most beloved musicals by the mid-1940s. By that time, Astaire thought he was ready to leave Hollywood. While filming Blue Skies 1946, he announced his retirement and chose Putting on the Ritz as his farewell song. But his retirement didn't last long. 2 years later, Easter Parade called him back, and over the next 10 years he starred in some of his most famous movies. One of them was The Bandwagon, 1953, directed by Vincente Minnelli. Astaire played Tony Hunter, a failing star who is trying to start over. It was a good part for him at the time because Hollywood was changing, and he had to show he could still shine. One of his most famous roles was in the movie Dancing in the Dark, a duet with Sid Charisse in Central Park. Even though he was 54 years old, he still moved with the grace and accuracy that made him a star decades earlier. Then came Funny Face in 1957, in which he danced with Audrey Hepburn. The movie mixed fashion, romance, and Parisian charm. Astaire played a photographer who turns Hepburn's character into a model. They were a noticeable age difference, but they got along well. The choreography was meant to complement Hepburn's delicate style while still letting Astaire lead numbers like Let's Kiss and Make Up. These roles weren't just comebacks, they were reinventions. He was showing that no matter how much Hollywood changed, he would always find a way to stay relevant outside of movies. Street wanted to share his love of dance in a new way, so in 1947, he co-founded Fred Astaire Dance Studios in New York City with Charles Cazenave Sr., a retired movie executive. Their goal was to offer professional dance lessons to everyone. The studio was an instant hit, and it quickly grew into a global franchise with over 250 locations around the world. Astaire personally helped create the programs for the studios, making sure they met his high standards. He thought that great dancers were made, not born, and he wanted everyone to be able to learn. Unlike most dance schools, his lessons included Latin dances like salsa and cha as well as ballroom classics like the waltz and tango. His studios offered both individual lessons and group practice, making it a friendly place for students to learn. Fred Astaire spent most of his career wowing audiences with his dance moves, but in the 1960s he took on a new challenge. He stopped doing musicals and started doing dramatic roles. This was a big change for someone who was so connected to Hollywood's golden age of dance. His biggest success in this new direction came in the 1974 disaster movie The Towering Inferno, which starred Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, and Faye Dunaway. He played Harley Claiborne, a charming con man with a heart. Unlike the slick, confident characters he usually played, Claiborne was vulnerable and showed a depth that surprised audiences. His performance was so strong that he was nominated for his first and only Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He didn't win, but the recognition was long overdue. He did win the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role and the Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actor, though. The Towering Inferno was the biggest hit of 1974, making over $200 million around the world. It was full of action, fire, and tension, but Astaire's role added a new dimension to a show-heavy movie. Critics loved how he showed grief, especially in the scenes where his character mourns the death of his love interest, played by Jennifer Jones. Some thought his nomination wasn't just for this role, they saw it as a way for the industry to finally recognize his impact on cinema, even in a genre that wasn't his specialty. He proved he could hold his own with some of Hollywood's biggest names. As he had already been, he changed himself a lot before this. In 1958, he made history with An Evening with Fred Astaire, a one-hour TV special that aired live on NBC on October 17. It wasn't just another variety show, it was the first major TV special recorded on videotape in color. At the time, this was a big deal. He made sure it was a show to remember. He danced with Barry Chase, who he later called one of his favorite dance partners. The Jonah Jones Quartet and David Rose's orchestra played music for the show. The special was a huge hit, winning 9 Emmys, including Best Single Performance by an Actor. The reaction was so strong that 3 more specials were made in the years that followed, directed by Bud Yoren and co-produced by Astaire. Merged dance and music in a way that felt new and exciting. It also showed how entertainment is changing. Chrysler saw how powerful TV could be and became a big sponsor, putting their cars on display during the 59 AM Air showed that he was still a major force in the business by adapting to new formats and continuing to amaze audiences. But if there was one moment that truly showed how far he could go with his performances, it was his famous dance sequence in Royal Wedding, 1951, an MGM musical directed by Stanley Donen. In this routine, he seemed to dance on the walls and ceiling of the room. It was the first time anyone had seen anything like it. The effect was made possible by a rotating screen. Barrel's set was a huge steel frame that could be turned. The camera and cameraman were attached to rigs that could move with it, and the furniture and props were held in place by bolts or magnets. This complicated setup made it look like a staircase was flying from the floor to the walls and then up to the ceiling. The number was so ahead of its time that Lionel Richie recreated it for his 1986 music video Dancing on the Ceiling. The dance scene is still thought to be one of the most innovative in film history. In 1936, in Swing Time, Astaire and Hermes Pan produced another groundbreaking moment with the shadow dance. Pan noticed that the stage lights cast multiple shadows of Astaire during rehearsals. This gave him the idea of what if Astaire didn't just dance with his own reflection, but with multiple versions of himself. To make it work, filmmakers used optical effects. First, Astaire danced in front of a blank screen while strong lights cast shadows. These shadows were then filmed separately and optically tripled. Finally, the pre-recorded shadows were combined with live footage of Astaire dancing. The shoot lasted 3 days, but the end result was worth it. One of the most memorable parts of Astaire's career was the shadow dance. It also got Hermes Pan nominated for an Academy Award for Best Dance Direction. Fred Astaire was more than just a dancer, he also had a love life, a life of heartbreak, a life of passion, and even fights over his legacy. In 1933, he married Phyllis Livingston Potter, a New York socialite with a young son from a previous marriage. They met at a golf luncheon and became lifelong friends. They had 2 children together, Fred Jr. in 1936 and Ava in 1942. During this time, Air's career was at its peak, with roles in Top Hat, 1935, and Swing Time, 1936, 2 movies that defined Hollywood's golden era. His dancing looked easy because he was happy and his family life gave him stability. But in 1954, Phyllis was diagnosed with lung cancer and died at the age of 46. This broke his heart. He was in the middle of filming Daddy Longlegs in 1955 and almost quit the role because he couldn't imagine doing it without her help. For decades after her death, he stayed single and focused on his career and children, but life had another surprise in store. Astaire got married again in 1980, when he was 81 years old. His new wife was professional jockey Robin Smith, who was 45 years younger than him. Smith was the first female jockey to ride for Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt Jr. in 1972 and even appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Even though they were different ages, they were really connected and stayed together until he died in her arms in 1997. Outside of Hollywood, Astaire had hobbies that not many people knew about. He was obsessed with horse racing and golf. He owned stables, went to races, and stayed deeply involved in the sport. His love for horses wasn't just a hobby, it changed his life and even led him to Robin. Also, golf was very important to him. He played whenever he could, whether it was during breaks or on social occasions. He loved the game so much that he met Phyllis at a golf event. For decades, Fred Astaire set the standard for grace in Hollywood movies. But when he made his last on-screen dance appearance, it wasn't in a classic musical, it was on Battlestar Galactica, a science fiction TV show set in space. In the episode The Man with 9 Lives, which aired on January 28, 1979, Astaire was 80 years old and played Captain Dimitri Chameleon, a smooth-talking con man pretending to be Starbucks's long-lost father. It was an unusual role for someone who was known for his elegance, but he fit right in, he brought a touch of old Hollywood charm. Astaire didn't look for the part, his grandchildren loved Battlestar Galactica and often talked about it, which made him curious. Instead of just watching with them, he called producer Donald P. Bellisario and asked if there was a part for him. Bellisario was shocked and reportedly said, "Mr. I will write a 2-hour episode around you." The episode only ran for an hour, but it gave Astaire a chance to do what he did best, dance. At first, he wasn't sure about it, he hadn't danced on screen in years because getting older had slowed him down, and he didn't want to let anyone down. But when the cameras started rolling, he walked onto the set with actress and Jeff, who played Caress Blasey, and they did one last dance. The routine was short and simple, nothing like the dazzling numbers he was known for, but it was full of grace and carried the elegance that made him famous. Jeff was the last woman to dance with him on screen, making her a legend in Hollywood history. For the scene, Astaire wore a space-themed costume with an ascot, which he probably picked out himself. It was a small thing, but it mattered that he stayed true to himself even in a world of spaceships and futuristic settings. His appearance on Battlestar Galactica wasn't meant to revive his career, it was for his grandkids. He wanted to enter their world and make them laugh, which made it more than just a TV moment. It was a quiet farewell to the art he had mastered. 8 years after that, on June 22, 1987, Fred Astaire died at the age of 88. He had pneumonia. People all over the world lost not only a dancer, but also a man who had changed entertainment forever. He was called an icon by President Ronald Reagan. Mikhail Baryshnikov said he was just perfect. Gene Kelly, a rival and close friend of his, paid tribute to a man who set the highest standards. Irving Berlin, who wrote songs for Astaire, said that he was irreplaceable, but the most touching tribute came from Astaire himself. In his last moments, he turned to his wife Robin Smith-Aire and asked her to tell his fans how much they had always meant to him. Even at the end, he was thinking about the people who had supported him, the ones who had watched him dance and believed, even if only for a moment, that magic was real. Even after he died, Astaire's name became the subject of a controversy in 1997, when a vacuum cleaner commercial used a digitally altered version of him dancing. Fans were furious. Astaire had made it clear in his will that his image could not be used for ads or unauthorized biographical portrayals. He once told his wife, "I don't really want my life to be misunderstood." Robin worked hard to protect his memory. She sued companies that used his likeness without permission, but the problem wasn't just with him, it started a bigger conversation about digital recreations of dead artists. Some said it was a way to bring legends to new audiences, while others said it was an attack on their memory.